Let me get real with you. Life can get overwhelming. There's so much pulling at your attention, demanding your energy and cluttering your mind. It's no wonder we often feel stretched thin, disconnected, or even a little lost. I've been there. I know what it's like to wake up feeling heavy, not because of one big thing, but because of the hundreds of little things that pile up over time. It's exhausting, isn't it? But here's the good news. You don't have to live like that. You don't need to carry the weight of everything and everyone that no longer serves you. And I'll tell you this, it's not about making loud declarations or cutting ties dramatically. It's about quiet, intentional actions. It's about letting go in a way that feels true to you, without needing validation or applause. I'll be honest, this isn't always easy. There were times when I held on too tightly to things I knew weren't good for me. I stayed in toxic relationships longer than I should have because I was scared of what people might think. I clung to goals that didn't even matter to me anymore because I thought quitting meant failure. And I constantly sought approval, even from people who didn't value me, just to feel enough. It wasn't until I started quietly letting go, without guilt, without drama, that I began to feel free. What I've learned through experience and Stoic wisdom is that life becomes infinitely lighter when you remove the unnecessary. It's like clearing out a cluttered room. At first it feels daunting, maybe even emotional, because some things have been there for so long. But once you let go, there's a sense of relief, clarity, and space to breathe. That's what I want for you, to feel that space, that lightness, and that peace. Let's get one thing straight. This isn't about running away from problems or avoiding responsibility. It's about reclaiming your focus and energy. It's about choosing what truly matters and letting go of everything that's been silently holding you back. And you don't need to announce it to the world. This is a personal journey, one that's done in quiet strength, not loud defiance. I can promise you this, the things we let go of define us just as much as the things we choose to hold on to. By releasing what no longer serves you, you create room for growth, purpose, and peace. You open up a path for the life you've always wanted to live, a life that feels aligned with your values and your true self. So take a deep breath and let's start peeling back the layers. Together, we'll explore what needs to go, what's worth keeping, and how to step into the next chapter of your life with clarity and strength. Trust me, the freedom you'll feel is worth every step. Let's begin. When I first started reflecting on my own life, I realized something startling. Not all the goals I was chasing were actually mine. Some of them came from society's expectations, others from the opinions of people around me, and a few from who I thought I was supposed to be. It hit me hard because I'd spent years working toward things that didn't even light me up. And let me tell you, that realization was both liberating and terrifying. I felt like I'd been running a race, only to realize I was on the wrong track. But here's what I learned. This isn't about failure, it's about clarity. It's about stepping back and asking yourself, what do I truly want? Once I did that, my life started to shift in ways I never thought possible. Let me show you how you can do the same. Silent reflection is where it all begins. In today's noisy world, it's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of doing more, achieving more, being more. But when was the last time you paused and really thought about why you're chasing what you're chasing? When I finally stopped and sat with my thoughts, I realized I was carrying around goals that didn't belong to me. I had been climbing ladders placed against the wrong walls. And the truth is, we all do this in one way or another. The first step is to create space for reflection. For me, this meant carving out uninterrupted time to sit with my thoughts. No phone, no distractions, just a notebook and a pen. I asked myself hard questions. What am I working toward? Does this align with the person I want to become? Who am I trying to impress with this goal? Some answers were uncomfortable, but they were also freeing. I discovered goals that were rooted in comparison or the need to prove something to someone else. And let me tell you, nothing feels heavier than a goal that isn't aligned with your soul. Letting go of unnecessary goals isn't about giving up, it's about prioritizing. When I decided to release certain aspirations, I worried I'd feel like a quitter, but the opposite happened. Letting go gave me more focus and energy for the things that truly mattered. It's like decluttering your mind. When you remove what's unnecessary, what's meaningful becomes crystal clear. Sometimes, letting go requires confronting old versions of yourself. I realized I was holding on to certain ambitions because they once mattered to me, even though they didn't anymore. It's okay to outgrow your goals. Growth is about evolving, and sometimes that means saying goodbye to something you once thought you needed. This isn't a failure, it's wisdom. One of the most powerful things I learned was to distinguish between goals that bring joy and goals that bring validation. For years, I chased achievements that looked good on the outside but left me empty inside. I thought success was about titles, numbers, or recognition, but the truth is, real success feels light, not heavy. It's fulfilling, not exhausting. If you're working towards something and it feels like a constant drain, it might not be your goal, it might be someone else's. It also helped me to redefine what success looks like. For so long, I measured it by external standards, what others could see and applaud. But when I shifted to focusing on internal alignment, everything changed. Success became about how I felt at the end of the day, not what I could check off a list. It became about living a life that felt true, not impressive. One practice that grounded me during this process was asking myself, what's the worst that could happen if I let this go? Most of the time, the worst-case scenario wasn't nearly as bad as I'd imagined. In fact, letting go created space for better opportunities, ones that felt aligned and exciting. Goals that truly matter have a way of rising to the surface when you clear out the noise. I also learned the importance of trusting my instincts. Society loves to tell us what we should want: a bigger house, a higher salary, a perfect body. But when I listened to my gut, I realized some of those things didn't matter to me at all. Trusting yourself means being okay with stepping off the beaten path and pursuing what feels right for you, even if it looks unconventional. Letting go is also about releasing the fear of judgment. I used to worry so much about what people would think if I changed direction or gave up on a goal. But here's the thing. People are too busy with their own lives to care as much as you think they do, and the ones who genuinely care about you will support you no matter what. The fear of judgment is often just a shadow. It feels big, but it's not real. One of the most rewarding parts of this journey is how much lighter you feel when you let go of unnecessary goals. You gain mental clarity, emotional freedom, and time to invest in what truly matters. For me, that meant spending more time with loved ones, diving deeper into passions that brought me joy, and living in a way that felt authentic. This process also taught me the value of saying no. By letting go of goals that didn't align with my purpose, I got better at recognizing when to say no to new commitments that didn't fit. Saying no isn't selfish. It's necessary for protecting your energy and staying focused on what matters most. The beauty of letting go is that it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing practice of reflection and realignment. As you grow, your priorities will shift, and that's okay. What matters is that you stay honest with yourself and give yourself permission to change course when needed. When I look back, letting go of unnecessary goals wasn't just a turning point. It was a breakthrough. It gave me the freedom to live a life that feels true, not forced. And that's what I want for you too. Trust me, the clarity and peace you'll gain are worth every ounce of effort it takes. So take a deep breath, reflect, and let go of what no longer serves you. The best is yet to come. When I let go of the unnecessary goals weighing me down, something unexpected surfaced. Relationships that no longer served me. It wasn't just the goals that had been draining my energy. It was some of the people around me too. And let me be real with you. Cutting ties with toxic relationships is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but it's also one of the most freeing. It's not about anger, revenge, or even making a big deal out of it. It's about choosing yourself, your peace, and your well-being over the chaos someone else brings. The first step to freeing yourself from toxic relationships is recognizing what they look like. Sometimes they're glaringly obvious, like the person who constantly criticizes or belittles you. But other times, they're subtle. A friend who only reaches out when they need something, a family member who manipulates you with guilt, or a colleague who undermines you at every turn. Toxicity can wear many masks, but the common thread is how it makes you feel. If someone leaves you feeling drained, anxious, or doubting your worth after every interaction, that's a red flag you can't ignore. I used to tell myself, it's not that bad, or maybe they'll change. But here's what I've learned. Waiting for someone to change is like standing in the rain, hoping the sun will come out. It keeps you stuck in the storm. People can change, sure, but it's not your job to fix them. Your responsibility is to protect your energy, even if it means walking away. The best way to start creating distance is to set clear, quiet boundaries. I say quiet because you don't need to make a dramatic announcement or justify your actions. Boundaries are for you, not for them. It could be as simple as saying no to plans that don't feel right, or limiting the time you spend with someone who drains you. When I started setting boundaries, I felt uncomfortable at first. Saying no felt selfish, but over time, I realized it was one of the most self-respecting things I could do. Let me tell you, not everyone will like your boundaries. Some people will push back or accuse you of being cold or unkind. That's their reaction, not your problem. The people who genuinely care about you will respect your need for space. Those who don't were likely benefiting from the lack of boundaries you had before. This can be painful to accept, but it's also liberating. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not one-sided expectations. One of the biggest challenges in cutting ties is guilt. I used to feel guilty even thinking about distancing myself from someone, especially if they'd been in my life for a long time. But guilt is often misplaced. Just because someone has been part of your story doesn't mean they need to stay in every chapter. Relationships are meant to grow and evolve. If a connection is holding you back or pulling you down, it's okay to let it go. You're not abandoning them, you're choosing yourself. There's also the fear of confrontation. I get it. Cutting ties can feel intimidating, especially if the person has a strong personality or tends to react emotionally. But here's the thing, you don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your peace. You can end or distance a relationship gracefully without engaging in drama. One strategy that worked for me was shifting my focus from their reaction to my intention. Instead of worrying about how they'd feel, I reminded myself why I needed to take this step. When you approach the situation calmly and with clarity, it's easier to move forward without getting sucked into unnecessary conflict. Sometimes, cutting ties isn't about an outright end, but about creating emotional independence. I've had relationships where I couldn't completely walk away, maybe because they were family or part of a work environment, but I could control how much power I gave them over my emotions. Detaching emotionally doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop letting their behavior dictate your peace. I started practicing this by reminding myself Their actions are about them, not me. It's a small mindset shift, but it makes a huge difference. Another tool that helped me was reflection. I'd ask myself, what does this relationship bring into my life? Does it align with the person I want to be? Being honest with myself was tough, but it clarified who I needed to let go of and why. Sometimes we hold on to people out of habit, not because they're adding value to our lives. Reflection breaks that cycle and gives you the clarity to act with intention. When you start distancing yourself, fill the space they leave with things that uplift you. I found that focusing on hobbies, meaningful friendships, or personal growth helped me navigate the emotional void that cutting ties sometimes creates. It's not about replacing one relationship with another. It's about redirecting your energy toward things that nourish you. This process is healing and reinforces why letting go was the right decision. One unexpected benefit of removing toxic connections is the relationships that improve as a result. When I started cutting ties with draining people, I noticed my healthier relationships blossomed. I had more energy to invest in the people who genuinely cared for me and brought positivity into my life. It was a powerful reminder that by letting go of the wrong connections, you make room for the right ones. Don't rush the process. Letting go takes time, especially if the relationship was deeply ingrained in your life. Be patient with yourself and trust that every step, no matter how small, is progress. For me, it started with setting one boundary, then another, and eventually creating the distance I needed. It wasn't instant, but it was worth every effort. Walking away from toxic relationships isn't about anger or bitterness, it's about self-respect. It's about choosing to live a life that feels lighter, freer, and more aligned with your values. You don't need their validation or permission to prioritize your peace. You just need the courage to take that first step. And trust me, once you do, the freedom you'll feel is unlike anything else. Let's move forward together and continue building a life that feels truly yours. As I learned to let go of toxic relationships and reclaim my energy, I noticed something even deeper pulling at me: the need for approval. It was sneaky, showing up in ways I didn't expect. I'd catch myself seeking validation for my decisions, my achievements, even my worth. It wasn't just from people I knew, but also from strangers, social media, and the world at large. I realized that no matter how much I distanced myself from toxic people, I couldn't fully free myself until I stopped needing their approval in the first place. That's when everything shifted. Approval seeking is exhausting. It's like chasing a moving target, one that never stays in the same place long enough for you to hit it. When you live for the validation of others, your happiness and sense of worth become dependent on something you can't control. I've been there, and let me tell you, it's a draining way to live. The good news? You can break free, and once you do, the peace and confidence you gain are life-changing. The first step to releasing this need is understanding where it comes from. For me, it was rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being judged, fear of not being enough. Maybe you've felt this too. It's that little voice in your head that says, "What if they don't like me?" Or "What if I'm not good enough?" But here's the truth. No amount of approval from others can fill a void you haven't addressed within yourself. The validation you're searching for has to come from within. One of the most powerful tools I've found for breaking this cycle is reflection. I started asking myself, why does their opinion matter so much? In most cases, the answer was tied to my own insecurities, not their actual importance in my life. When you start questioning the weight you give to other people's opinions, you begin to see how little they truly affect your worth. I also had to get comfortable with disappointing people. This was a tough one for me because I've always been a people pleaser. But trying to make everyone happy is a recipe for frustration and resentment. I realized that every time I said yes to something just to gain approval, I was saying no to myself. Learning to prioritize my own needs wasn't selfish. It was necessary. It taught me that my worth isn't tied to how much I can please others. Another turning point came when I started embracing imperfection. Seeking approval often goes hand in hand with the pressure to be perfect. I used to think I had to have it all together to be worthy of respect or love. But perfection is an illusion, and chasing it only leads to burnout. Once I accepted that I'm allowed to make mistakes and still be valuable, the need for constant validation started to fade. Self-acceptance is a powerful antidote to approval-seeking. One practice that helped me immensely was shifting my focus inward. Instead of asking, "Do they approve of me?" I began asking, "Do I approve of myself?" This simple shift changed everything. It made me realize that the only opinion that truly matters is my own. If I'm living in alignment with my values and doing my best, that's enough. The more I focused on my own standards, the less I cared about meeting everyone else's. Stoic principles played a big role in this transformation. One of my favorite teachings is from Epictetus, who said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." I realized that other people's opinions are external. They're outside my control. What I can control is how I respond to them. When I stopped giving power to things I couldn't control, I started to feel more grounded and confident. I also began practicing gratitude. It's amazing how focusing on what you're grateful for shifts your perspective. Instead of worrying about who approves of me, I started appreciating the people who already love and support me. Gratitude reminds you that you're enough just as you are, without needing anyone else's validation. Letting go of the need for approval also means embracing your individuality. I used to dilute my personality to fit in or avoid conflict. But the more I did that, the less authentic I felt. When you constantly try to be what others expect, you lose sight of who you really are. I made a conscious decision to show up as myself, unapologetically. Some people loved it, others didn't. And that's okay. You can't be everyone's cup of tea, and you don't need to be. Another thing I learned is that people are often more focused on themselves than on you. We tend to overestimate how much others are judging us, when in reality, they're too busy worrying about their own lives. This realization took a huge weight off my shoulders. It allowed me to stop overthinking every little thing and just live. Releasing the need for approval also involves redefining success. For a long time, I equated success with external validation, applause, recognition, compliments. But success isn't about how others perceive you. It's about how you feel about yourself. When you align your actions with your values, that's success. When you wake up and feel at peace with who you are, that's success. Shifting my definition of success helped me focus on what truly matters. One practical tip I used was limiting my exposure to environments that fueled my need for approval. Social media was a big one for me. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others and seeking likes or comments for validation. Taking a step back and spending less time online helped me reconnect with myself and my own values. It reminded me that my worth isn't determined by algorithms or other people's curated lives. I learned the value of celebrating my own wins, no matter how small. Waiting for someone else to acknowledge your achievements can leave you feeling empty and overlooked. But when you take the time to recognize and celebrate yourself, it builds confidence and self-worth. I started keeping a journal where I wrote down one thing I was proud of each day. It might sound simple, but it was incredibly empowering. Breaking free from the need for approval isn't about cutting yourself off from others or becoming indifferent. It's about finding balance. It's about valuing your own opinion more than anyone else's. It's about living authentically and knowing that your worth isn't up for debate. The journey isn't always easy, but it's worth every step. Once you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of seeking validation, you'll find a peace and confidence that no one can take away. Let's continue this path toward reclaiming your power and living with intention. Letting go of the need for constant approval freed up my mind and energy in ways I never thought possible, but there was still something weighing me down: stuff. The physical things I surrounded myself with were quietly taking a toll on my life. At first, I didn't see it. After all, we're told that possessions symbolize success, comfort, and security. But over time, I noticed something. The more I had, the more stressed I felt. Instead of bringing joy, my possessions were creating noise and clutter, both in my home and in my mind. It wasn't easy to confront this. Each item I owned seemed to have a reason for staying, a memory, a purpose, or simply the thought that I might need it someday. But as I started to ask myself deeper questions about what I truly needed and valued, it became clear that a lot of what I had wasn't serving me anymore. It was just taking up space. Clutter doesn't just live in your home, it lives in your thoughts too. Every item you own demands a small part of your attention. You might not realize it, but the overflowing closet, the unused kitchen gadgets, or the piles of paper in your office quietly pull at you, creating a sense of unease. For me, the turning point came when I asked myself, why am I holding on to these things? The answers varied: guilt, nostalgia, or simply the habit of keeping. But none of those reasons were good enough to justify the mental weight they carried. Starting to declutter felt overwhelming at first. I remember standing in my living room, looking at the piles of things I'd accumulated over the years and feeling paralyzed. But I reminded myself that it wasn't about getting rid of everything. It was about creating space for what truly mattered. I began with small steps, focusing on one drawer, one shelf, one corner at a time. Every item I let go of felt like shedding a layer of stress. It was liberating. One thing I realized was that the value of an item doesn't come from owning it, but from how it serves your life. I used to keep things out of a fear of scarcity, thinking, what if I need this later? But most of those just-in-case items never got used. When I let them go, I learned to trust that I'd find a solution if and when the need arose. This shift in mindset was empowering. It taught me that I didn't need to hold on to excess to feel secure. I also started to notice how my environment affected my mood. A cluttered space made me feel anxious, while a clean, open area brought a sense of calm. By removing what didn't add value, I created a home that felt peaceful and intentional. This wasn't about aesthetics or following a trend. It was about reclaiming my mental and emotional space. When you're surrounded by only what you love and use, your space becomes a reflection of who you are, not a storage unit for things you've outgrown. Decluttering also taught me to be more mindful about what I bring into my life. I used to shop as a way to cope with stress or boredom, accumulating things I didn't need or truly want. Now, I ask myself a few questions before buying anything. Do I need this? Will it bring value to my life? Is this worth the space it will take up? This simple habit has saved me money, time, and the frustration of dealing with more clutter later on. One of the biggest lessons I learned was to let go of the emotional attachments tied to certain items. There were things I kept not because I used or loved them, but because they represented a memory or a time in my life. But I realized that letting go of an item doesn't mean letting go of the memory. I still have the experiences and lessons those objects represent, even without the physical reminder. This mindset shift allowed me to release things I'd been holding on to for years without guilt. As I continued to declutter, I noticed a ripple effect in other areas of my life. Simplifying my possessions made me more aware of how I spent my time and energy. I started to prioritize experiences and relationships over acquiring more stuff. Instead of focusing on what I could buy, I focused on what I could do, spending time with loved ones, exploring new hobbies, or simply enjoying moments of stillness. These experiences brought me more joy and fulfillment than any object ever could. Minimalism isn't about deprivation, it's about intention. It's about choosing quality over quantity and creating space for what truly matters. For me, that meant investing in fewer, better things, items that served a purpose or brought me genuine happiness. It also meant finding contentment with what I already had, rather than constantly chasing the next shiny thing. This shift in perspective was freeing. It allowed me to focus on abundance, not in terms of material wealth, but in terms of joy, peace, and purpose. One unexpected benefit of decluttering was how it improved my relationships. When I let go of the distractions and noise created by my possessions, I found I had more time and energy to connect with the people who mattered most. Instead of worrying about maintaining or organizing my stuff, I could focus on meaningful conversations, shared experiences, and simply being present. Another surprising lesson was how decluttering helped me develop a sense of gratitude. As I pared down my possessions, I became more appreciative of what I had. Each item I chose to keep felt intentional, and I found myself valuing it more. Gratitude shifted my perspective from wanting more to being content with enough. It's a powerful feeling, one that brings a deep sense of peace and satisfaction. Living with less also taught me to let go of comparison. In a world that constantly encourages us to want more, it's easy to feel like you're falling behind if you don't have the latest or the best. But when you focus on what truly matters to you, the noise of comparison fades. You start to see that your worth isn't tied to what you own, but to who you are and how you live. Letting go of material excess isn't just about decluttering your home, it's about decluttering your mind and life. It's about making space for clarity, joy, and purpose. As I reflect on this journey, I can confidently say that living with less has brought me more peace and freedom than I ever thought possible. You don't need to own more to be more. You just need to let go of what's weighing you down and embrace the beauty of simplicity. Let's keep moving forward together. After shedding the weight of excess possessions and finding clarity in a simpler life, I began to notice something else holding me back: the relentless need to be perfect. It wasn't just about what I owned or how I organized my space. It was deeper, a constant pressure I placed on myself to have everything in life figured out, to get things right the first time, and to meet impossibly high standards I had never questioned. Perfectionism wasn't just a mindset. It was a trap that kept me from embracing life fully. I used to believe that perfection was the goal, whether it was a project at work, a personal goal, or even just how I presented myself to the world. I thought that if I could get everything flawless, I'd feel confident and accomplished. But the truth was the opposite. The more I chased perfection, the more anxious and stuck I felt. Instead of moving forward, I spent countless hours obsessing over every detail, terrified of making a mistake or being judged. It took a toll on my peace, my creativity, and my happiness. Breaking free from the grip of perfectionism starts with recognizing that perfection is an illusion. I learned this the hard way, through moments when I worked myself to the point of burnout, trying to achieve something that, in hindsight, didn't even matter that much. The problem with striving for perfection is that it's never enough. You hit one milestone, and there's always something more to fix, polish, or improve. It's a never-ending cycle that leaves you feeling like you're running on a treadmill, going nowhere. I began to ask myself a powerful question: What would happen if I let go of being perfect? The answer wasn't as scary as I thought. In fact, it was freeing. I realized that imperfection doesn't mean failure, it means growth. When I let go of the need to be perfect, I opened myself up to learning, experimenting, and improving without the fear of getting it wrong. I started to see mistakes not as something to be ashamed of, but as opportunities to grow stronger and wiser. One of the biggest lessons I learned was to value progress over perfection. There's a quiet beauty in moving forward, even if the steps are small or messy. I used to think that only perfect outcomes were worth celebrating, but I've come to understand that every effort, every attempt, is a victory in itself. Progress is what builds resilience, and resilience is far more valuable than the fleeting satisfaction of a perfect result. Another important shift was focusing on effort instead of outcome. When I stopped measuring my worth by the results I achieved and started appreciating the effort I put in, everything changed. I realized that success isn't about flawless execution. It's about showing up, doing your best, and learning along the way. This mindset allowed me to take risks I would have avoided before because I was no longer paralyzed by the fear of failing. Perfectionism also feeds on comparison. I used to look at others and think, they have it all together. Why can't I be like that? But the truth is, nobody's life is perfect. Social media, polished presentations, and highlight reels can make it seem like everyone else has figured it out. But behind the scenes, we're all navigating challenges and imperfections. When I stopped comparing myself to others, I started focusing on my own journey and celebrating my unique path. Letting go of perfectionism also meant learning to embrace vulnerability. I used to see vulnerability as a weakness, but now I understand it's a strength. Admitting when you don't have all the answers, asking for help or sharing your struggles doesn't make you less capable. It makes you human. Vulnerability builds connection, and it's through connection that we grow. By letting go of the facade of perfection, I was able to build deeper, more authentic relationships. Another important lesson was to redefine failure. Perfectionism thrives on the fear of failing, but failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process. I failed more times than I can count, but each failure taught me something valuable. It showed me what didn't work, gave me a chance to try again, and ultimately made me more resilient. When you stop fearing failure, you start to see it as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Perfectionism can also rob you of joy. I can't tell you how many moments I've missed because I was too focused on getting things right. Whether it was stressing over hosting a perfect dinner or obsessing over the details of a project, I often forgot to enjoy the process. When I started letting go, I found joy in the imperfect moments, in the laughter, the learning, and even the occasional chaos. Those are the moments that make life meaningful. One of the most practical ways I've learned to combat perfectionism is by setting realistic expectations. I used to pile my plate high, thinking I had to excel at everything all at once. But that's not sustainable. Now, I prioritize what truly matters and give myself permission to let go of the rest. This doesn't mean settling for mediocrity. It means focusing my energy on what aligns with my values and goals. Another practice that helped me was celebrating small wins. Perfectionism often makes you overlook the little victories because you're so focused on the big picture. But every step forward, no matter how small, deserves recognition. Celebrating progress not only builds confidence, but also reinforces the mindset that you're enough, just as you are. I learned to be kinder to myself. Perfectionism can make you your own harshest critic, constantly pointing out flaws and shortcomings. But I've realized that self-compassion is far more powerful than self-criticism. When you treat yourself with kindness and understanding, you create a space where growth and resilience can thrive. Letting go of perfectionism doesn't mean giving up on excellence or ambition. It means redefining what success looks like and allowing yourself the grace to grow, stumble, and rise again. It's about finding joy in the journey rather than waiting for the perfect destination. The freedom that comes from embracing imperfection is something I wish for everyone. It's a lighter, more fulfilling way to live, one where you're free to be your best self, flaws and all. Let's keep moving forward together. As we wrap this up, I want you to take a moment to reflect, not on what you've achieved, but on what you've let go of. Because true growth, the kind that brings peace and clarity, often comes not from adding more, but from shedding what no longer serves you. The unnecessary goals, the toxic relationships, the endless chase for approval, the clutter of possessions, and the prison of perfectionism, all of these weigh us down in ways we often don't even notice. But when you start releasing them, quietly and intentionally, something incredible happens. You create space. Space for what truly matters. Space for joy, purpose, and a life that feels genuinely yours. This journey isn't about perfection or doing it all at once. It's about small, deliberate steps toward a life of intention and balance. I've walked this path, and I know how freeing it can be. Trust me, the weight you'll lift by letting go of what doesn't serve you is worth every ounce of effort. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's the first thing you're ready to let go of before 2025? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your insights might inspire someone else to take their first step too. If this resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more I want to share with you about living a lighter, more intentional life, and I'd love for you to be part of this journey. Together, we can create a life that's aligned with what truly matters. Let's make it happen.